Welcome to the Lesson 7 Code Challenge, and this is going to be basically an HTML plus JavaScript challenge where we're going to use the DOM to basically loop in our JavaScript into our HTML and bring it alive into a dynamic web page that's going to basically generate random memes, jokes, quotes, and riddles. So if you haven't seen this before, you can click these buttons on the right and it should generate something random every time we click it. And we can do jokes and quotes and riddles, and you have to reveal the riddle answer by clicking this button right here. So this is going to be a really cool challenge. You can obviously see that there are some styles already applied to it. And since we haven't covered CSS yet in this full stack roadmap series, that's going to be the next lesson. I've done this for you. So I've already wired up all of the CSS styles, and all you have to do is write the HTML and the JavaScript to make this thing come to life. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the user stories. So this is from the blog post that I wrote here for this lesson. And just as a recap, a user story is something that we use quite often in programming to come up with requirements. A good example of a common user story is every time a user enters his email and password and clicks log in, the user should be, dropped into their home page within the app. That's a basic user story that just says, okay, when the user does this, this happens. And we have some user stories defined for this code challenge. The first one is a user should be able to click buttons on the right side of the screen to generate random memes, jokes, quotes, or riddles. So as we saw, we can click these buttons and get something random, obviously going in the correct location. Only one piece of content, so this is the second one, only one piece of content should show at a time. So for example, if the user clicks show a meme and there's a quote already showing, the application should remove the quote and show a random meme. So as you see, every time I click a new button, this content right here is going to disappear and it's going to replace it with nothing and then generate a different type of content. So right now we have a riddle. If we replace it with a joke, that goes away down here and our joke shows up here. So that's another requirement. The third one, content should be displayed under the appropriate heading. So in other words, if I click tell me a joke, the joke needs to show up under tell me something funny rather than I want a riddle or something like that. And then when showing a random riddle, the answer should never be revealed before the user explicitly clicks to reveal the answer. So when I click riddle, you're going to see that I get the riddle, but I don't get the answer. And I have to click this reveal riddle answer in order to get the answer itself. The next one is if a user clicks reveal riddle answer and there is no riddle, an alert should show letting them know. So in other words, there's no riddle populated down here, and if I click reveal riddle answer, I get an alert up here at the top of the screen saying there's no riddle to show an answer for. And then likewise, if a user clicks reveal riddle answer and the answer is already revealed, an alert should let them know that it's already there. So let's go to a riddle, let's reveal it, and then let's click this again, and the riddle it's going to say the riddle answer is already exposed. All right, so those are the requirements, and of course I gave some hints here. The div element with a unique ID or class name can be a great way to establish a container for future content. So I'll show you how that works. We also need to use the HTML element .hidden property. So that has to do with hiding and showing that riddle answer. It says there's no perfect solution. There's obviously 100 solutions to this. And then we got some starter code. All right, so here is the starter code that we're working with. And we have to basically take this, which only has some buttons that don't do anything yet, and we have to turn it into this, a working content generator. So as we solve this, I'm going to try to walk you through my thought process a little bit, but I'm not going to spend an overly detailed amount of time on each of the components. Like the main purpose of this is to give you the solution, not to basically build an entire app and think through every last detail of it. So let's go to our starter, and we'll keep this one up so that we have a template to look at of what we're trying to do. And then from this starter, let's go ahead and get acquainted with what is here already. So we'll start in the HTML section. You can see in this HTML section we have, let's zoom out just a little bit, we have some instructions. So notice how we've used semantic HTML here. So at the end of the previous video we talked about semantic HTML, how HTML should show intent. And what we've done here is we've created a main tag, which is going to say here's the main content area. And then we have one section, which is going to be the content. This is the empty area right here. And then we have another section called sidebar, which is where all the actions are. Okay, so that's what we mean by semantic HTML. And it looks like everything has been implemented for us. So we have our actions, our buttons, and our buttons are connected up to click events that are down in the JavaScript section. So our content, what we're going to do is add it right here in the section with a class called content. All right, so then of course we have CSS. This is just styling the whole web page for us, but this is not required since we haven't really talked about how to use CSS yet. So this should just automatically work for us, and there's no action required by us in that. And then finally we have JavaScript. All right, so this one's where some of the tricky part is going to come in, where we're going to be working with the document object model. As you can see, we have some templated functions and we have our to-do items. So with each of these functions, we need to show a random piece of content in the correct location and never show more than one at a time. So similar to our user stories, this is just reiterating that. So we have a show meme function, which is going to be connected up. If we look at our HTML, it's connected up with this show meme button. All right, so if we were to go down here at the bottom of this function and just console.log is working, all right, so we've got that connected up, and now we just click show meme, and if we open up the console, so down at the bottom left, and we see is working, we know that this has been wired up correctly. So lucky for us, we've got this wired up already. No work to be done there. All right, so we've got a show meme. Then we have show joke, which is wired up to this button. And then that does the same thing for quote and riddle for the next two buttons. And then finally, the reveal answers function is going to be wired up to this reveal riddle answer button. All right, and obviously this is styled a little bit differently, but it's still a button HTML tag. And then at the bottom, you can see a bunch of code that I wrote already for you, which is just a bunch of content that we can use for randomly generated content. And then it has a couple of helper methods. So it has a data object, it gets a random number, and then it uses those two things in this method right here to get random data. So basically what we do is we pass in, we have a parameter called type, and if we pass in memes, we'll get a random meme. And if we pass in riddles, we'll get a random riddle. And you can see that I've already hooked that up to these functions that are wired up to the buttons. So as you can see, we have for the meme one, we have already assigned a variable to this random meme URL. And if we were to just console.log what we're getting here, and then we press show a meme, hold on. So show a meme, let's go to the console, and you'll see that we get a link to an image, which is going to represent the meme. All right, so that's the overview of what we're working with. All we have to do is write some HTML and then finish these functions that have already been templated out for us. I think the first thing that we'll do is probably the easiest. So in our template, you can see that we have these headings here. So this output looks like an H2 heading, and these ones down here look like maybe H3 headings or something like that. So let's go ahead and put those in there. So where it says your HTML code goes here, let's make an H2. So all you have to do in CodePen, it's pretty easy, is type the tag that you want to make and then press tab, and it creates that element for you. So we'll go ahead and type output and see what we get. Looks like we're getting the correct element there, and now we have to go to the headings. So we want, in the next one, we want an H3, and we want programmer memes. So far so good, we're looking okay. Tell me something funny, so this will be jokes. So another trick you can use in CodePen and also Visual Studio Code once we start working with it, if you go to the end of a line and press Control-C and then press Control-V, you'll get the same line copied down. So let's do that one more time and then replace the text within it. So give me some wisdom and I want a riddle. Actually, we need one more. So we've got programmer memes. Oh, we missed the tell me something funny. So let's do that real quick. All right, so we've got our output and all of our sections defined. Now, if you remember, in the user or in the hints, if we go back here and look at the hints, it says the div element with a unique ID or class name can be a great way to establish a container for future content. So what I mean by that is if we go here and we look at these headings, we obviously have to insert some sort of HTML element, probably a paragraph tag, after each of these. Now, how do we know where to put it? Like, how do we select each of these headings and have a container to put it after them? Well, something that I think is smart to do is create a div element which is going to act as that container for all of our future paragraph tags, which will have, or paragraph or image tags, which will have the content itself. So let's see what we're going to do here. So I think what we want to do is after each of these headings, instead of trying to dynamically figure out where to put these different pieces of content, let's be explicit about it. So let's make a div. So we'll type div, and we want to give it a class or an ID because we want to be able to identify this individual div as the container that we want to put the content in. So for this one, let's just give it a class and we'll call it meme content. All right, so we'll enter down, and basically what we want to accomplish with the JavaScript is we want to identify this div, and then we want to insert our content within that container that's already sitting there ready and waiting for us. Now we could programmatically generate a div like this, but it just would be a lot of extra work, unnecessary work, and it would require a lot more code. So let's do this with all of the different sections. So we'll go down here. And now let's just replace these classes because we want unique identifiers for our JavaScript to basically be able to query. So this one will be jokes content, or joke content. We'll stay consistent here. And then quote content, and finally riddle content. All right, so these should be able to be selected by JavaScript very easily. All we would need to do, let me save this real quick. All we need to do is open up the console. Let me see if I can get this. All right, so the console looks like we're in the right JavaScript context, and all we need to do is document.querySelector, and then since we have classes here as the attribute, we need to use the class selection syntax, which is the dot preceding the name of the class. So if we wanted to select this container right here called meme content, we can just type in .meme content, and we should get that div. All right, so from there, all we have to do if we want to insert something in it is we save it in a variable. So we'll maybe say a container, and then from there we say container.append child, and then this is where we pass in our generated HTML element. So in this case, let's just go ahead and create something for that. this is just practice to understand how we're solving this problem. We're not actually doing anything yet. So we'll say new element is equal to document.createElement, and then maybe we want to put in, let's go ahead and practice this with the meme container. So we need to put in an image. So to do that, we type in image tag, all right? So we're gonna create that element, and then we're gonna use something called the set attribute property, all right? So in order to create an image element, we know how to do that, so let's go ahead and practice that here. If we say image, it's going to give us a source attribute and an alt attribute. We're going to ignore this alt attribute because it's not like totally necessary. And then from here, we can pass in a URL to an image, and that will display it within the browser here. So let's just go ahead and go down to our data here, and we've got this array of memes. So let's just grab one of the URLs just to test it for a second and paste that into the source attribute of our image. And you can see that our image is coming in there nicely, and I've actually written some CSS. If you were to look in the CSS portion, I've actually selected all images here, and I've said that the max width is going to be 350 pixels. So it's already going to come in nicely for you. You don't have to worry about doing that. So this is basically what we want to insert into that specific programmer memes area. And if we wanted to do that, we've already got our new image element, and all we have to do here is say new element dot set attribute. All right, so if we didn't know anything about this, this is how we'd figure it out. So first we say new element dot node type. So we talked about this in the prior video. Looks like we lost the context, so we have to go back to the CodePen context. Let's see if that still has this. Okay, we got to redefine this real quick. So first let's select the container. So we just got to redo this because it lost the context that we were working in. So now we have the container, which is the meme content, and then we have to create the new element. All right, so we created an image, and now we just say new element dot node type, and it's going to return us 1. Now in the MDN documentation, let's go to the MDN documentation real quick, and let's type in node type. This is a method we learned about in prior videos, and you can see in the node constant or the node type constants, a value of 1 represents an element. So let's click on that element, and then we come down and we can see that within the element there are methods, and one of those should be, if I'm remembering this correctly, is set attribute. So if we click on set attribute, it says that we give it the name of the attribute we're wanting to set and then the value we want to set. So in this case, if we were trying to set the source attribute of an image, we just have to say new element dot set attribute. Source is the name of the attribute we're setting, and then maybe we'll paste in that link that we had earlier, so that will be the value of the source. So we press enter, and now what we can do is basically take this new element that we have, and we take the container and we append child. We use the append child method to pass in that new element, and boom, we have a new image showing up in that section that we want it to show up in. So like I said, we haven't actually done anything. This is just practicing and figuring out in the live console, like, okay, how do we actually reason through this? What methods are we going to use? All that kind of stuff. Now we should be able to go down into the JavaScript and implement some of these functions to do exactly this. All right, so let's close this out here. We don't need this for a little bit. And then let's refresh the page because we want a clean slate here. It looks like, actually not sure why this is still there. Let's see. Oh, that's right, because we had put this in here already. Okay, let's get rid of that. We don't want anything to start off. We want this to be empty. And now let's come down to our templated methods. And in this case, we want to show a meme. Right now, when we click the button and we open up the console, it's going to print a random meme URL. And we know that this URL should be set equal to the source attribute of an image tag or image HTML element. So we also know how to create that. So let's go ahead and start writing this method. The first thing we need to do is grab the container that we want to put it in. So we will say container will be equal to document.querySelector, and then we need to pass in meme content, all right? So we should have the container selected. You could obviously test that if you wanted to. I think if we just pass it into console.log, we should be able to do that. And show a meme, and we get the correct container, so we're doing good so far. From here, we need to say new image is going to be equal to document.create, is it create element or new element? I can't remember. Okay, so it is create element, and we want an image element. Now we just need to set the attribute, so we want to set the source attribute. And what do we want to set that equal to? Well, we want to set it equal to a URL, and we happen to have that already. So we just drop in the random meme URL, and that should set the attribute for us. And then finally, we come down here at the bottom, and we say container.append child, and we pass in our new image. Okay? So let's go ahead and save our pen here. And when we click this show meme, we should get an image populating in the right section. And we do. All right, so if we click it again, it should put another image in there after this. And it does. And then another one. And we could keep going with that, but obviously the instructions, one of the user stories, is saying if there's already something there, delete it and replace it with the new one. So we have to figure out how to do that. And a good way to do that is by using an if statement. So if we come down to our method here of show meme, we need to ask before we insert that into the container, we need to say if there's an existing image there. So how do we do that? One way that I can think of is if we take we'll just say set a variable is image equal to container.querySelector, and then we'll look for an image. So basically what this is doing is it's saying this container, which represents this div right here, if we grab that container and within it we look for an image element, and if we find something, then this value is image is going to represent the actual HTML element. If we don't find anything, then it's going to return null. So we're going to get nothing. So basically what we have to do is we say if is image, so if that's a truthy value, which should be truthy as long as it comes back with an image, then we need to clear the contents of this container. So a way that we can do that is by using the inner HTML property. And if we go to the MDN documentation, I believe this exists on the Node interface. So let's take a look. Looks like it's not here. So let's search for that. So inner HTML. Okay, so it's on element. So on each HTML element, there is this property called inner HTML. And it says the element property inner HTML gets or sets the HTML markup contained within the element. So a quick trick, this is something that I just have learned over time, you wouldn't necessarily know it from this documentation, is you can pass in an empty string to this property to clear all the HTML from a specific container. So if there's an image already there, we're going to say the container's inner HTML is equal to an empty string. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is every time we click this button, we're going to generate a random meme URL. Then we're going to create a new image. We're going to check if there's an existing image, and if so, clear it. And then we're going to insert the new image. So basically, this is another way of saying let's replace whatever's there. So let's try it out. so we got our first image here, and if we click this again, it should replace it. Excellent. So we are replacing it correctly. We've got this in the right spot. And for the rest of the methods, we pretty much should be able to implement the same type of logic and implement it for all the rest of the buttons. So let's get rid of this to do because we have done it. We have implemented that correctly. Now, one thing I want to do before we get any further is implement this clear all method. Now, the reason I want to do this is because it's basically, since we see that we have buttons that kind of do the same thing, we don't really need to write this logic right here every single time. All we need to do is we need to write one method that looks at all of the containers here, and it clears all of the containers before we replace it with new content. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and take some of this code here. So we'll take that out of there and put it in the clear all. So let's rename this variable and we'll say meme, all right? And let's go ahead and grab this container. So actually this is not valid code. We need to type document.querySelector and we need to grab the meme content container. So we'll say meme container is equal to that. And this should represent this div right here. Now we can do the same thing for the other divs, so the joke content and the quote content and the riddle content. So I'll show you what we're going to do here. Like, this will make sense in a second, so just bear with me. So we're going to copy this down 4 times. We're going to say this one will be a joke container, this one will be a quote container, and this one will be a riddle container. And then we of course have to replace this with joke and quote and riddle. All right, so in this JavaScript that we just wrote, we are basically selecting each of these containers that should have the content that we're putting in. And from here, all we have to do is set the inner HTML to an empty string. And no matter if there's something there or there's nothing there, it doesn't matter. We're just going to clear it no matter what. So we'll say meme container.inner HTML equals an empty string. And we'll do that 4 times over and just replace these variables with the correct one. All right, so this clear all method is going to look in all of the different sections and it's going to clear them, no matter what's there. So all we have to do down in this show meme thing is before we append a new image, we just have to call the clear all method. So that should clear everything out. So let's try it out. Let's show a meme and then click it again, and it looks like it's clearing it and putting in the new one. And that's going to happen for all of these because we're just going to pass this clear all method into each of these template functions. Okay, so the next one is show a joke. All right, so we've already got a random joke text, but let's go ahead and console.log the random joke text just to see what we're working with. So let's click the button, make sure it's working, and let's open up the console. All right, it looks like we're getting a string that represents the joke. So in this case, we want to insert a paragraph element and put this text content in it. All right, so this should be rather simple. So we'll say new paragraph is equal to document.createElement, and we'll put in a p tag. And then we say p.textContent is equal to the random joke text. So I'm taking the variable here, which should be equal to a random joke, and I'm assigning it to the new p element that I just created. And then finally, I need to clear all because I need to clear anything that's there already. And then I need to insert it into the container. So before we wrote out a different variable that selects the container and then we did it in 2 steps, but we can basically just do this in 1 step. So we can say query selector. In this case, we want to get the joke content. Can't type. And then at the end, we can just chain on this append child and pass in the new paragraph element. Let's see if that works by clicking Tell Me a Joke. And it's saying P is not defined. That's because I, for some reason, just said P instead of new P. So that should work better this time. All right, so we're getting some content here. Now, this will be the real test. If I click Show a Meme, does this content get erased and a meme show up? That's what should happen. So let's show a meme, and we see that in the jokes section, there's nothing there, which is great. So let's tell another joke, and you can see that we have a joke but no meme. So far, everything's working great. So let's go to the next method that we need to implement. So this will be a quote. All right, so let's go ahead like we've been doing. We'll console.log the random quote, and we'll click the button. And you can see in the console we get an object with two keys, or two properties. We have the author property and the quote property, both which are strings. So what we want to do here is we want to display a P or a paragraph element, and then another paragraph element right below it with the author. So let's do that. So we'll say the quote itself is going to be document.createElement, and that will be a paragraph element. And then we'll say the author is going to be document.createElement, and that will also be a P element. Now for the text content, the quote will be pretty straightforward. We just say quote.textContent equals the random quote, and then we need to actually get the quote property, which is the quote itself. Now for the author text content, we need to grab the random quote again and grab the author property, but we also want to put that little dash before it. So all we have to do is make a string with a dash and a space, and then we concatenate that with the author name. All right, so we've got our text content, let's see if we did this right. So we got our quote and then our author stored in two P elements. So now all we should have to do is first clear all. So we clear everything out, and then we come down here and we say document.querySelector. We want to grab the quote content container, and then we append child, and we put in the, first we want to put in the quote. And then the next thing we want to do is grab the same container and put in the author. So let's go ahead and run this. Looks like we got a random quote working just fine, but this is kind of messy. I want to refactor this a little bit. We never want to write the same thing 2 lines in a row. That's just bad practice. So what we want to do is we want to store the container like we did before in a variable. So let's put this right here. So now we have the container in that container variable, and now we just have to call container.appendChild for both of these. And this should work still. Awesome. So now we can do jokes, we can do quotes, and we can do memes, and they all kind of clear each other out when a new piece of content is generated. Now the last one is going to be the hardest one, and that's because we only want to show the riddle itself, but we don't want to show the answer to it until this reveal riddle answer is clicked. So let's mark off our to-dos here. We are done with the show quote, we are done with the show joke, and we're done with the clear all method, so we're doing pretty good here. And finally we have to show the riddle. So I think what we're going to do is let's first see what we're getting. It already shows us, I already wrote in a comment that says this is what you should get, but let's just verify it. Always good practice. So console.log random riddle, and let's click the button. We get our random riddle with a answer prop and question prop. So let's go ahead and be explicit about this, and I'm going to show you a little ES6 or the latest spec of JavaScript. I'll show you a trick on how to destructure, I believe that's the correct term for it, but we're going to destructure properties off of this object. So all we have to do is we say const, and then we put these little brackets here, and then we pass in the properties that we're looking for. So we want a question and we want an answer, and that will be set equal to the random riddle that we're getting. So now we should be able to console.log a variable called question as well as a variable called answer right here. So let's see if that is true. All right, so we got these printing out okay. And basically what I did here, this right here is the equivalent. So let me comment it out for a second. What I just wrote there is the ES6, or the latest spec of JavaScript, equivalent syntax to doing this. So we say question is equal to random riddle dot question, and then answer is equal to random riddle dot answer. So these two lines of code can be simplified into this single line of code right here by putting these little brackets around there and selecting the property that you want. So that's just a little trick thought I'd show you as we're solving this. All right, so we've got our question, we've got our answer. Now we have to create our paragraph elements. So I think we're going to show the question and the answer both in a paragraph element, just like we did with the quote, but we obviously have to hide the answer up front. So how we'll do that is this. We'll say the question element will be equal to document.createElement. We'll put a paragraph tag in there, and then we'll set the text content equal to the question itself. And then let's go ahead and take, since we're inserting twice, let's go ahead and get a single variable for the container. So document.querySelector, and we'll grab the riddle. We need a dot at the beginning to select a class. We want the riddle content div, so that will be this riddle content div, and that should work. And now we want to say container.append child, and we'll put in the question element. Let's see if that works. Okay, awesome. We have this paragraph element representing the riddle. And now what we have to do is we have to insert the answer, but we have to make it hidden. All right, so I think the way that we're going to do this, if you remember from the hints, it says you may need to use the HTML element.hidden property. So let's take a look at what that is. So the HTML element property hidden is a Boolean, which is true if the element's hidden, otherwise it's false. And you can actually set this equal to true or false to navigate between something that shows and something that hides. So that's good to know. We should be able to use that on any element that we're working with here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a, similar to this question element. Let's just copy this down. And this time, it's going to be the answer. So we'll do answer element. And then that will be set equal to the answer. All right, now there's one additional thing that we have to do. So we've got this button over here called reveal the riddle answer. And that's going to call this function down here called reveal answers. Now, if we're anticipating in the future, this is something that you'd probably figure out after you implemented it and you're like, oh, shoot, I realize this now, but I've already built this, I know how it works. So what I'm saying is that in the future, we're going to have to click this button and we're going to have to figure out whether there's a riddle answer available and whether that riddle answer is hidden or not hidden. So in order to do that, in order to make our jobs easier, we should probably set an ID attribute on this paragraph tag we're calling answer. So we've already set the text content. So let's go ahead and append this to the HTML. So just so that you can see what's going on here. So we're appending the answer element. So now when we say riddle me, we get the riddle and the answer, which is obviously not what we want to do. But what we can do here is after this, we say answer element.set attribute. And what I want to set is an ID. And then what I want to do with that ID is set it to riddle answer. All right, so what this is basically going to do is down here in the riddle content, it's going to create a p tag that has an ID equal to riddle answer, okay? And then the answer to the riddle will be sitting right there. So later on, when we click the reveal riddle answer button, it's just going to say, okay, go find me a p tag with an ID of riddle answer. And if that's there, then if it's there and it's hidden, I want to unhide it. If it's not there, I want to alert the user that it's not there. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing with that code down here. And then, of course, we need to call the clear all method, as we did with all the other functions. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to hide this. So we need to grab the hidden property and set it to true on this answer element. So when I click riddle me, we should see just the question and the answer should be hidden. So let's click riddle me and we get exactly what we're looking for here. So that's good. Now the last thing we have to do, so we have completed this to do, I believe. Let's just test it by clicking on some other ones. Okay, looks good so far. And now we have to implement this reveal answers. So let's go back to our requirements here. Our user stories say, when showing a random riddle, the answer should never be revealed until we click that button. So we got that. If the user clicks reveal and there is no riddle, an alert should let the user know that there's no riddle there. If it's already there and it's already revealed, another alert should be popped up. So what we need to do here is we need to first check, let's see, what do we need to check? So what we need to check is if there is a riddle answer, or not a riddle answer, but a riddle in general. So the way that we do that is we first grab the riddle container, which will be equal to document.querySelector riddle content. Okay, so that should give us this div right here. And then from there, we can say the riddle is going to be equal to the riddle container.querySelector. And in this case, we want to search for a paragraph tag. So if there's any paragraph tag sitting within that div, we know that there's a riddle there. And if we know that there's a riddle there, then we know that we either need to reveal the riddle answer or we need to alert the user that it's already revealed. Okay, so now we're going to do an if, else if statement. So we'll say if there's a riddle revealed, and then we have one more step to do. So we need to say the answer is equal to document.querySelector, and the answer is going to be what we named it above right here. So riddle answer is the ID that we're looking for. So we just put this hashtag to search for an ID rather than a class, and we type in riddle answer. Okay, so there's our answer. And what we're going to say is if there's a riddle and there is an answer, then I want to alert the user there is already an answer revealed. Or actually no, because even if there's an answer even if there's an answer hidden, it's still going to be registered under this variable. So let's go ahead and test that out real quick. Let's comment this code right now, and then we'll console.log answer. Okay, so what we would expect is we've already created in this previous method, we've created this element with an ID called riddle answer, but we've hidden it. So it's there, it's just hidden. So what we want to check is when we search for this by its ID, if it is hidden, what value do we get? So we're going to console log that answer. I'm first going to click riddle me, and then I'm going to click reveal answers. I'm going to look at the console, and you can see that even though it's hidden, we still found the element within the DOM using this query selector. So in other words, we have to check whether it's hidden. So we got to print out answer.hidden instead of just answer. So let's generate a riddle and then reveal it, and we're going to see that the hidden property is set to true. So now what we need to do is uncomment this code, and we're going to say if riddle and the answer is hidden, then we need to reveal it. Okay, so we need to say answer.hidden equals false. All right, so that line of code right there should pretty much complete our web page here, with the exception of those alerts. So let's go ahead and generate a riddle and click reveal the answer, and you can see that it reveals the answer right there. Okay, and maybe we even want to come up to this method, and instead of just setting the text content to answer, we can put the answer is, and then the answer. So let's try that one. It says the answer is in echo. So perfect. Now the last thing that we have to do is handle those other cases. So else if. So if the riddle is true, so if there's a riddle there and the answer is hidden, we're going to reveal it. If the riddle is there and the answer is not hidden, so right here, so we basically, this is redundant. So if we make it to this else if block, that means that that either the riddle was not there or the answer was not hidden. So if we get here and we say if the riddle is there, that's all we need to check. So if the riddle is there and we're trying to unhide it again, then we're going to say alert, the answer is already revealed. Okay, so let's see if that works. So we'll click the riddle, we're going to reveal it, and we're going to click the reveal button again, and it says the answer is already revealed. All right, and then the last piece is just the else statement, which basically means that we don't have a riddle at all, but we're trying to reveal the answer. So we'll say there is no riddle to reveal the answer to. Sorry, the video cut out here. I do not know exactly where I was at, but basically we were just completing the last part here, where if you click on the riddle and you reveal the answer, it reveals. If you reveal it again, it's already revealed. Or if you have a random quote and you try to reveal the riddle answer, it's going to say there's no riddle to reveal the answer to. So we've pretty much completed this challenge. Hopefully it was fun for you. A quick way that you can share this is click the share button down here and share it on Twitter. Be sure to tag me at ZG_dev and put in the hashtag 100 days of code. That's where you can get support from the tech community, the web dev community on Twitter, and hopefully we'll see this popping up a couple times. I think this is a fun little web page to create with some interactive JavaScript. And if you want to customize it a little bit, you can go down to the JS section and replace some of these quotes and some of these memes and jokes with your own favorites. So hopefully you enjoyed this challenge. I don't think I missed anything, but leave it in the comments if I did. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more in this full stack roadmap series.